Well, welcome, and thank you very much. My name is Michael Davitt, and I'm the mayor of the city and the current city council member. As we get started this evening, I wanted to make just a couple brief introductions. I won't list everybody by name, but I want to, our city council is all here, so if the city council members would stand up, and also our And this event was spearheaded by our Public Safety Commission. So if all our Public Safety Commissioners could stand up. Here, and thank you, and I want to recognize them for taking the leadership role on getting this done with staff, because staff did quite a bit of work in orchestrating this and with the leadership of the commission, and we're appreciative for those efforts. Our goal this evening is to provide some background information on how our city works in regards to public safety, best practices, and also additional resources in place currently. We also want to explain and educate our residents about ways you can get involved to make your family safer and also make the community safer at large. At the end of the evening, there'll be a time for some question and answers. The way we're going to do question and answers this evening, because there's so many people here, is that there's question cards that are here, and I know that Marilyn Smith is walking around very nicely, and she has cards. There's also cards in the back. So if you have a question during the presentation that pops in your mind because of some comments that are made, be a good time. You can jot that down, and that's a help. So we'll get through the program, and then hopefully we'll answer some of the questions that you may have during that time period. And then we'll move on to the question and answers, which we'll do through the card. So we appreciate everyone's cooperation on that. And I'm also remiss in not recognizing a couple of our school board members who are here. So if you two would stand up and say hi, Alan. So appreciate their involvement. We obviously partner with the school district on many levels, and public safety is one of them. And just as an example, our school crossing guards, we work with the district on providing the school crossing guards. So at this point, it's my pleasure I'm going to turn it over to Terry Manning, who is the chair of our Public Safety Commission, and he's going to welcome you and give you a few words as well.
Good evening. My name is Terry Manning, Chair of the Public Safety Commission. Moved to La Cañada 50 years ago, and this was my junior high auditorium, so back in time. The commission is made up of 5 La Cañada residents with very diverse backgrounds, but with one common goal. That is maintaining and enhancing the safety of our fine community. The commission is responsible for evaluating the public safety needs of the community and making recommendations to the City Council to address these needs. Over the past few years, we've become very, very aware of the increasing crime, particularly residential burglaries in our city. The Commission constantly monitors this trend through social media, local publications, and the monthly reports from the Sheriff's Department. Although we are still one of the safest cities in California, this increase has impacted many of us directly. My home was burglarized in December. Or indirectly by our neighbors, family, and friends being victims of these crimes. Although the city has taken many significant steps to combat this increase through technology, equipment, and additional staffing for the Sheriff's Department, it became very apparent at our January 22nd commission meeting, where we had standing room only crowd telling their personal and very emotional stories of being victimized, that we felt that we need to bring the community together tonight, as we are to address these issues and hear from our elected and our law enforcement officials about what is being done about this and about this very serious issue, what we as individuals can collectively do to make our city a safer place. For 34 years, I was a fire chief in Los Angeles and worked closely with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department on emergency and non-emergency incidents. And I've always been impressed by their dedication, professionalism, and commitment to mission. During the later stages of my career, I was selected to be an emergency preparedness commissioner for the entire LA County region, all 88 cities. In this role, I had the very unique opportunity to compare and contrast the law enforcement agencies in the county, and I could say without reservation, we truly have the finest law enforcement department serving our citizens today. However, times have changed, and law enforcement cannot do it by themselves anymore. A safe community requires a close partnership between the residents and law enforcement. And one of the most important things you'll learn here tonight is how you can be a vital part of that partnership. In closing, your Public Safety Commission meets the last Monday of every month. Please come as often as you can to learn firsthand what your local first responders are doing to keep our community safe. During each meeting, there's a public comment period where you can express your concerns and experiences. We want to hear it all, the good and the bad. Your voice, your ideas, your experiences are a vital element to the public safety process in our city. Thank you.
This is just like the Oscars, and is back and forth on the stage. And as Terry didn't mention, but during his time on with the fire department, he was in charge for some years of the fire prevention safety for the Oscars. And I wasn't interested in anything else when we were looking at his resume. I just thought that was pretty good. So, but just like the Oscars, I had to come up with a joke, and I didn't. This is obviously not a joking matter, but I figured whichever presenter gives the shortest, most concise, and accurate information, we're going to give them a jet ski, just like they did last night. I'm kidding, of course, but so we've got this program broken down into a couple segments. We're trying to give some local perspective, some regional perspective, and some statewide perspective, and we have some great speakers here. And so we're going to start off with what is happening in our community. And we have two speakers, Chief Eric Parra, who's a 30-year veteran of the Sheriff's Department, was promoted to the rank of chief in 2013. He is currently in charge of the East Patrol Division, which the city of La Cañada is in the East Patrol Division, which includes Altadena, Temple City, Industry, San Dimas, and Walnut. And he is going to speak along with Captain Chris, Chris Blasnick, who is our Crescenta Valley Sheriff's captain of our station and has been with us for 1 year and is doing a great job. He really is, and he's been a welcome member to the community. So I'm going to turn it over to the two fine gentlemen.
Good evening. My name is Eric Parra. I'm the Division Chief for the East Patrol Division, and I'm going to keep this very brief in the hope that there is a jet ski at some point in time. But my job is to be the Sheriff's representative for the East Patrol Division of Los Angeles County, and that's basically 1/4 of the county. And you all are in my jurisdiction, and so my job is to get the resources of the Sheriff's Department to help you in any way that I can, and I'm fully committed to do that. And the Sheriff's Department has assets from SWAT teams to specialized gang enforcement teams to burglary robbery task force teams to terrorism investigators to almost anything you can name we have, and we have those at our disposal. So what I look for is I look for the captain to go up through our chain of command, which is, where's Jeff Scroggin, our commander? where is he? He's here. There he is. That's Commander Jeff Scroggin in the back. He works directly for me, and he deals with the captains every single day. And when they have a request, they go through him, and ultimately it comes to me, and I decide where the assets go. And I'm committed to giving you the assets you need to make sure your communities are safe. And you are in outstanding hands with Chris Blasnick here. He's been a very responsive captain. He's dedicated. He almost lives here at the station, and he has an outstanding reputation, outstanding work ethic. And you're also in great hands with your city council, your political representatives, and Terry Manning, your public safety commissioner member, because we go way back, and he's got tons of experience, and he is very well versed in public safety. So with that, I'm going to introduce Captain Chris Blasnick, and he's going to go over some of the things we're doing to make sure that you're safe.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the introduction, Mike, but I thought you were going to be funny because I wanted to name the winner tonight, which is La La Land, right? So anyway, we came up with a quick PowerPoint, and by the way, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. We want to reach out to everybody. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, now that I've been here for a year, I basically own it, bought it. It's my fault, it's my problem, and if you have a problem, it's my responsibility. I can't shirk my responsibilities to anybody else right now. I've been here, I've seen the highs and lows. I've seen a couple months where we had an uptick in crime, but I've also seen some months where I just can't believe how low the crime is also. What I have seen though, when there is a problem, we notice the uptick, that we're on it right away. There's a quick response. Our quality of life issues are high around here, and we want to keep them like that. The troops have not disappointed. So how do we get there? I want to show some of the background of who your deputies are that are working your streets and who we are. So we got our mission, our ethics, our values, and our leadership for the Sheriff's Department. By our mission, we're talking about we need to provide a safe, secure city. We need to be proactive, and we need to be in crime prevention mode. We want to work in partnership with our city council, our administration, our residents, and our students. And I say our students because, as you know, our schools are very important to us here, so our students are very important to us. We also want to enhance the public trust through accountability and customer service. That's huge. If you're not happy, I'm not happy. Regarding our ethics, for La Cañada Flint Ridge, we enforce the law appropriately and without favor. Our badge is a symbol of public faith and trust, and exemplary in private and personal life. I know my people at the station, and I know this to be true. We're respectful and courteous, and respectful of everybody's constitutional rights and equality for all. Regarding our values, we value professionalism, compassion, equality, integrity, and a rehabilitative approach, sometimes with a tinge of, how would I want to put that? A tinge of being kind to people. You don't always have to be the mean police officer out there. Sometimes you can have a little bit of tinge of kindness, even though you're enforcing the laws. What kind of leadership do we have here in the city? You have a leader here that believes in building teamwork, having a lot of energy. I, for one, hate to be behind my desk. I like to be out and about, driving around your city. Has to be qualified, which I believe I am. Fair and approachable, but most importantly, you have to be respectful of those that work for you. And what do you get with that? Well, we get low crime rates. How many months do I count it on one hand? Not two hands, one hand. Low crime rate. You get an incredibly fast response time around here. We've been advertising a lot lately. I'd like to even have you go out there and compare it with other cities, but we average between 3 to 4 minutes on an emergency call, 5 to 6 minutes on a priority call, and about 15 minutes on a routine report type call. You get some pretty darn good fast response times. Right now, we're a contract city with La Cañada Flint Ridge. Today, we're currently at our contract rate at 101.33%. We're over. We've given you too much. I'm going to take some of it back, okay? But all these factors, it brings in increased productivity, and I've seen that this last 2 months. When we saw an uptick, I asked the troops out there to step up, and boy, they certainly have. As I report the stats every month at the city council meeting, they've done an awesome job, and they've made a lot of contacts out there, and I know you've been seeing them everywhere, on the streets, at the stop signs, and especially at the schools right now, I understand. Some of you have been meeting our parking ticket enforcement person, but we've stepped it up. Some of our current successes, and you may not know this, but in 2017, even though we're hearing on social media, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. Do you know, for the last 20 years, last year, just 2 months ago, 2017, was the second lowest year of Part 1 crimes reported in the city of La Cañada Flint Ridge since 1996. So it's been here. Problems have been here in the past. It's just how are we going to deal with them in the future? And there's nothing new. It just seems like it is because we're all communicating now. Social media's alive, next door neighbor's alive, Facebook's alive, school Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, stuff I can't even do. What we've also seen with February, after our heavy saturation out there, was a huge decrease in crime. We saw residential burglaries drop to almost nothing. The saturation worked, the undercover operations worked, the reserve deputies worked, the VOPs, the volunteers on patrol worked, the burglary crime task force, it worked. It made a difference. We saw a dramatic decrease last month. What we also saw is neighborhood watches are up, and Eric Matejka is going to come up here in a little bit. He's going to talk about neighborhood watch. We have 8 brand new neighborhood watches, totaling about 35 right now in the city. That's huge. Everybody's talking. What's new in the city? Well, a couple weeks ago, we got our new license plate reader vehicle. Our brand new Ford Explorer joins the other Ford Explorer, reading hundreds of license plates per minute as it goes down the street. So the deputy who's driving on Foothill or through your neighborhoods knows if a car is stolen or if the driver has a warrant for his arrest. That vehicle's here, and thanks to the city council, they gave us the money this year to get an additional car, which is much appreciated. We also have our new law enforcement technician out there. She also has been trained in recovering DNA and fingerprints, and most importantly, she's writing parking tickets out there, I've heard. The burglary task force has made some significant arrests. You've heard about 2 major rings that were caught in Temple City lately. We also, they followed a burglary ring up to Simi Valley last week. You may have read that in the paper. They followed another burglary ring out to Fontana. We know they're not from La Cañada Flint Ridge, but we know they have wheels, we know they're traveling, we know they're renting cars, and they're going all over the place. The burglary task force has done an awesome job, and they know your city well. Locally, we've had quite a few arrests too, and I couldn't be more proud of the troops. Some of the new things the department has to offer. We have we've upped our mental health evaluation team, which means in this city, if we have somebody having a crisis or needing some type of mental health, we have 24 hours of units we can call that have been specially trained in dealing with these people that may be in some type of crisis mode, may need some help, can help us find them places. A lot of times the deputies out here, what do you do with somebody who's having a crisis or a mental breakdown? We now have a team of people that can come out and assist us with that, take that person off our hands and find them where they need to go that's appropriate for the situation that's warranted. We also came up with the Human Trafficking Bureau, basically prostitution. What happens if you have prostitution in your city all of a sudden turn up on Foothill Boulevard? How do you deal with that? We have a whole bureau now that has discovered a lot of these victims, or what we called prostitutes in the past, are victims of human trafficking. So this bureau has really taken off. It's huge, but we also have the resources to deal with that. We also just came up with the Criminal Intelligence Bureau recently. They do our threat assessments, whether it's terroristic type things or even a school threat. We have help. It's not just the deputy out in patrol that's going to the school taking a threat. We have resources that we can turn to, a whole bureau of help. One of the other things is Crescenta Valley Station and La Cañada Flint Ridge was chosen to participate in the Narcan experiment. We've noticed a huge uptick in heroin overdoses. Fentanyl is being put into heroin now. People are dying across the country, and it's now just hitting the West Coast. So acting ahead of the game, we outfitted every deputy in patrol with Narcan for a nasal spray. So usually we get there before the fire department just because we're already out on the street when the emergency calls come in, but we've been chosen to be part of that. Of course, there's my picture right there. Notice how they blurred out the sheriff. Also, I wanted to talk to you too about our recruitment. This is a picture taken at the Rose Bowl last year. Don't worry, they're not that young. They're explorers, okay? But they're our feeder into our department. Took that last year at the Rose Bowl. Just a great group of people we're trying to bring on board, but we're having a lot of problems, and I need your help with this. Did you know it takes 100 applicants to get 4 people into the academy? 100 applicants. And 3 of those will make it through the academy. We need people. So if you know somebody, we're really pushing right now for recruitment. And it's not just us. It's Glendale. It's Pasadena. It's all the cities in Southern California. We're going outside the state now. We won't lower our standards. We've seen in the past what happens when you lower standards. The Sheriff's Department will not lower their standards. But it's incredibly hard to get somebody into the academy and through the academy. Our size and diversity are unmatched, as you know, but a lot of people have come up to me at the meetings, and some people have actually said, why can't we have our own police department? And this is a subject that I never want to touch on because it's like, what? What's wrong? We have one of the largest academies. Where do all the other small police departments go to get their academy training? They come to the Sheriff's Department. They're trained the same way. They're licensed by the state of California. We are all the same. The one thing we do have is our deputies go to the jail. They train in the jail. They learn what an inmate is. They learn why they did the crimes they did. And they become very experienced very fast working in the LA County jail system. Those same deputies come out here to La Cañada with that experience and knowing how to talk to and how to get through a contact with a possible suspect out here. You can't buy that. We haven't lowered our standards. I talked about that. We're 10,000 people strong, sworn personnel strong now. But one of the best things that I like is that we have a local dispatch. When you call, the dispatchers know the area. You're not calling a centralized place downtown. You're calling right here to Crescenta Valley Station where they know every location of the city. The deputies are your residents too. Some of them live in your city. I tell them every day, patrol the city as you'd want to patrol your own city and how you'd expect the officers or deputies in your city. That's how I want you to work. And lastly, I tell them, make sure you treat everybody, of course keeping officer safety in mind, make sure you treat everybody how you'd expect your own family members to be treated. And that usually works. And I know it works because I get just hundreds of commendations all the time throughout this past year. Every time I get one of these contact sheets, I go, oh boy, what'd they do? And I look and it's like, it's a commendation. So I know they're doing a darn good job out there. I know one of our city councilmen rode the other night with one of our deputies Saturday night to see how the operation worked. We're 42 contract cities strong. We're strong together. We'll fight this crime together. We're here for you. And whatever you need, you let us know. We'll keep fighting it. There's going to be upticks. We know there's going to be upticks, but we're going to be there when there are, and we will crush them. So thank you very much.
Excuse me, as you can tell, the chief and the captain are very committed to our community, and we're very fortunate to have them here. And just as the chief mentioned, there's 88 cities in LA County, and 42 of them are patrolled by the Sheriff's Department, LA County Sheriff. So clearly they're the largest police force collectively in the state. So we're very fortunate to have the resources that they offer. So as we move through the program this evening, we're trying to touch upon a lot of different topics, some at the local level, which we've just heard about, then some at the state level as well. We're very fortunate, as we talk about the state level changes, to have Michelle Hannessy here with us. Michelle is the president of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, which represents nearly 1,000 Los Angeles deputy district attorneys. She has been a deputy district attorney for the county for 19 years and tried over 100 jury trials, including 38 non-capital murders and 3 capital murders, which resulted in the death sentence. She is author of the California Gang Crimes Manual, and she has co-authored the Death Penalty Reform and Savings Act of 2016 and Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018. So we're very fortunate that Michelle made the time to come visit with us this evening.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for inviting me. I'm not going to win the jet ski. I'm a lawyer. We love to talk. So I've already resigned myself to that fact. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the justice system reform laws that we've had passed in California in the past few years, what they were intended to do, as well as some of the unintended results of the passage of those laws. And just FYI, this is me. We do have a website, laadda.com, where a lot of this information is listed if you want to get further information. And that is my email. So if you want to get more information, I'm always happy to provide it. So the first public safety law, and they all have the word safe in their title that we saw passed in California, is AB 109. It was the Public Safety and Realignment Act. And it was designed to reduce the state prison population and lower state prison costs by shifting some of those costs to local governments, to the counties. So it transferred responsibility for housing and supervising convicted felons, some convicted felons, from the state to the county. It shifted supervision of some of those convicted felons who were being released from the state to local county parole. And it also reduced the penalties for violating terms of release under that. But the local jails were not designed for long-term housing of convicted felons. They exist to house defendants detained pre-trial, waiting to have their trials, and for misdemeanor sentences which are less than a year. What happened is that AB 109 filled the local jail with long-term inmates, which doesn't affect those sentences, but it does affect how much space you have left for the lower level misdemeanor sentences. And in LA County, we have felons in LA County jail serving sentences of over 30 years. So that takes up bed space for that entire time that could be allocated elsewhere. But the real change, the real big change that we saw an effect from, was delegating supervision of felons with serious and violent criminal histories to the probation department under what is called post-release community supervision. So at a time when this happened, probation had to suddenly adjust from supervising people charged with petty crimes, with misdemeanors, to supervising high-risk parolees, felons. And they were given fewer tools than state parole had because, as we'll see, the punishments were also reduced. So the LA County Probation Department has on their website a most wanted list of individuals that have been released to their supervision under this program, and explain what's going on with that. And what you will see if you go there is a lot of these dangerous individuals have simply absconded into our communities. They just disappeared. This, for example, is Mr. Jesse Henson. He's a documented gang member. He has prior convictions for murder and robbery. He was released to LA County probation in June of 2016, and he disappeared by February 2017. And what it says at the bottom of every one of these is he was released from state prison to LA County probation under Public Safety Realignment, AB 109. So these are the kind of individuals who are now being supervised by our local probation rather than just the low-level offenders. A key example of how the changes in supervision worked out are parolee Michael Mejia. Mr. Mejia is charged with the murder of Whittier police officer Keith Boyer. Mr. Mejia had been released about a year before that shooting, and he had been found in violation 5 times during that year. If he'd been found in violation under the old system, he would have been returned to state prison for a year. But under the new system, he was repeatedly given what's called flash incarceration, which is just 10 days in local jail. These, and we're not going to play the audio because Mr. Mejia does curse, but these are his exact words from his post-arrest interview with the police that you will see here in this scrolling transcript. Mr. Mejia himself said AB 109 was one of the reasons he did what he did. So I've been accused of unfairly blaming AB 109 for the death of police officer Boyer, but it's not my words that said that was the reason. It was Mr. Mejia himself who said so. Next came Proposition 47, and this was a voter-enacted ballot initiative, and again, it had the word safe in the title. What it did, it reduced sentences for drug possessions to misdemeanors, and it also made all thefts under $950 misdemeanor offenses, even for repeat offenses, and that's one of the critical issues. It also collaterally and unintentionally eliminated DNA collection, and by doing so, it reduced the ability of the state to solve violent crimes like rapes and murders, because it's DNA collected from minor crimes that multiple studies have shown end up in helping the state and the police agencies apprehend violent criminals. Another problem is that police have limited powers to arrest on a misdemeanor offense. For a theft, they would actually have to witness it themselves to make the arrest themselves. So what happens is a citizen or a store employee has to make what's called a citizen's arrest unless the police officer was actually present when it occurred. Under the old system, a person who had prior arrests could be arrested as a felon on a felony charge, and the police have arrest powers on those felonies, so they could do that. But now, because no matter how many thefts you commit, it's always a misdemeanor, it limits the police's ability to make an arrest. Private citizens, as I said, can make a citizen's arrest, but it would be unwise and dangerous for them to try to detain someone who's going into your car, stealing items from your car until the police arrived. And likewise, retailers don't want the liability of having their employees trying to make detentions or pay salaries for them to go sit in court. And the end-all be-all is that since there's no room left in jail anyway for the misdemeanor sentences because of the space filled by the AB 109 felons, there's no consequence. And I haven't checked recently, but about 6 months ago I heard for LA County, in LA County Jail, a person sentenced to 180 days by the court would pretty much be processed in and out in the same day. That's where we were when I last checked. So these consequences, I think, are resulting in underreporting of the thefts that are occurring because nothing's going to happen and there's no real basis to make legitimate arrests when the laws limit the police and what they can do for misdemeanors. Finally, we had Proposition 57, again, had the word safe in the title. And what the voters were told about Proposition 57 is it was going to grant early release from prison to non-violent offenders. The problem is the law never defined who was non-violent. The law was silent on the issue. which meant the list would default, unfortunately, only to those crimes not already defined as violent under the law. And there is a list of violent crimes defined under the law. It is a very limited list that was created for an entirely different purpose, not this. Proposition 57 also had the unfortunate collateral consequence of preventing victims from being present for these early release determinations, which is a right victims have under our state constitution, the Victims' Bill of Rights, also known as Marsy's Law. So here's some crimes, some felonies that would qualify as nonviolent under Proposition 57, and I think you'll agree we would all consider these violent. Things like human trafficking, assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, as long as it's not a gun, exploding a bomb with intent to cause injury. Excuse me. Even domestic violence, which has the word violence in the name, is not a violent crime under Proposition 57. Now you have to excuse me, I do have a cold. So what happened is the state started releasing people from state prison. LA County initially got about 800 letters of people that they wanted to release, and here's just one of those letters. Mr. Sarabia was convicted of attempting to steal a car by brandishing a knife at the owner. We would call that attempted carjacking. That's a violent crime. It is on the list of violent crimes. And the letter notes that Mr. Sarabia's crime was violent. It says so right in the letter. And it notes that he was out of prison for less than 2 years when he committed this crime. Nevertheless, the Department of Corrections chose to release Mr. Sarabia, and he was released. And I get more of these letters every week, and there's a stack of them, forgive me, there's a stack of them out there in the lobby for you if you want a copy, because every week I find more offenders. Thank you. I think I have tea. And I'm just going to have to painfully, thank you. So if you look at those letters, like the last one is a gentleman, and I use the term loosely, named Freddie Alfredo Casillas, and it says right there in the letter, Mr. Casillas was serving a term of 16 years to life for murder. While in prison, he physically assaulted another inmate and slashed him 3 times with a weapon. And then he also threw a prison-made arrow at another inmate, hitting him in the head. He was released as a nonviolent offender, which is astounding because I don't think any of us would consider that to be a nonviolent individual, but he was in fact released. So there is, my PowerPoint's moving ahead without me. In response to these changes, a coalition of cities, led by Oliver Chief from Monrovia, has come together with the Taking Back Our Community program, which is wonderful, and it's growing more and more every day. Oliver will tell you about that. Additionally, a coalition of crime victims, law enforcement, business owners, and public safety leaders are trying to qualify a ballot initiative right now that would undo some of these unintended consequences, and that's the Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018. They're actively gathering signatures now, so if you see them at your local market or anywhere out, then you need to go sign this if you want to support this. And what it does is 4 key things. It reclassifies that list of crimes you saw as violent for purposes of early release. So those individuals and people like Mr. Sarabia are not eligible to be released early on their sentences. It requires a parolee on a 3rd violation, rather than just getting flash incarceration, to have to appear before a judge to see if the judge wants to impose a more severe sanction. It allows a 3rd theft offense to be charged as a felony, and it allows aggregation of value of multiple thefts and thefts by organized crime rings. It also reinstates DNA collection for certain misdemeanors and restores victims' rights. I am thankfully done. It is at keepcaliforniasafe.org, #KeepCaliforniaSafe. You can find the language of the initiative and more information on that website. Thank you very much.
Michelle, thank you very much. Obviously, very informative, very sobering, but it gives you a good example of what's occurring at the state level. And as Michelle alluded to, taking back our communities campaign is a statewide operation being led in part by Oliver Chi, and Oliver is a city manager of the city of Monrovia. He has over 20 years of governmental experience. He's also an active member of ICMA. Oliver authored the March 2004 cover story for Public Management titled Rising from the Ashes, Lesson Learned from the Southern California Wildfires in 2003. He also serves as a speaker at numerous local government workshops and conferences. Oliver is an Eagle Scout and has a degree from political science from the University of California, Los Angeles. And he has a master's degree in public administration from some private school in Los Angeles. So Oliver, come on up.
Does everyone know Arbo? He's from USC.
I know.
Thank you. How's everyone doing tonight? I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and appreciate the mayor letting a conflicted, confused individual that went to UCLA and USC share a little bit about a coalition that we've been putting together called Taking Back Our Community. You heard some sobering stuff just now, right, from Michelle. Michelle, for a couple of years, was sort of like the lone voice out in the wilderness saying, there's something wrong in California right now. And it's taken a couple of years, but it's starting to catch up in our local communities. If you're here tonight, you're probably concerned, right, about crime-related issues, about public safety, and there's a reason for that, right? Crime is increasing across the state. In fact, our current United States Senator, former Attorney General Kamala Harris, reported in 2015 that we had 166,588 more victims of violent crime that year, and that we had over 1 million more victims of property crime based on the state report released. So we're seeing crime increases across the state. You're seeing crime increases in LA County. You know, Michelle talked about Prop 47, right? So you take a look at some of the property and violent crime numbers throughout the county, pre-Prop 47 and post-Prop 47. Before Prop 47 went into effect in 2013, property crime was about 10% lower than it has been since that point in time. And violent crime has increased also. It's up 40% since 2003. That's almost 16,000 more victims every year in our county. Crime's increasing in LA also, right? LA has been steadfast in support of the city of LA, of AB 109, 4757. The elected leadership felt that those were appropriate measures. But in LA, there are crime increases too. Between 2014 and 2017, just look at some of the numbers, right? That murders up 250%, from 6 murders in 2014 to 21 in 2017. Robberies are up 40%, 46%. Violent crime is up 76%. That's more than 800 more victims when you compare the stats year over year. This is happening in the city of LA. And it's happening here regionally across the San Gabriel Valley, right? And we have all of this information outlined over in some handouts in the back. But since 2014, La Cañada Flint Ridge made the list. Burglaries are up 38%. The Sheriff's Department does, let me just say this, a tremendous job for your community. They absolutely do. They're one of our best partners in the city of Monrovia. The issue, though, that we're seeing is that crime is increasing, right? You look at this, do you know, in the city of Claremont, crime there, they have their own police departments, up 87%. Right? It's not a matter of who's providing the service. It's a matter of the system has changed, and it's resulting in increased crime levels. And I think the consistent response we felt in Monrovia and what we were hearing was this: the world's scaring me. Like, it doesn't feel safe anymore, and somebody fix it, right? And I think as public administrators, as the public who's engaged, your council here in La Cañada Flint Ridge, your Public Safety Commission, I think they immediately start asking, right? That's the right question. What can we do? What can we do to address some of these public safety issues? And I think the immediate response is, let's go buy some more stuff. We were hearing that in Monrovia. How many of you here have gone to a council meeting or talked to one of your council members or public safety folks and said, we need more cops, we need more license plate readers, we need more stuff? Everyone thinks that that's a terrific solution, and it could be part of the solution. The challenge, though, that we saw, and that's part of what led us to form our Taking Back Our Communities Coalition, is that we need to make sure we're looking to solve the right question, that before we start determining what we need to do, we've got to first be able to understand why this problem's occurring, right? And if you think back to the early part of the decade, to 2010, the discussion around public safety was different, right? And some of that can absolutely be attributed to the rise in social media use. We're sharing information more. But absolutely, 100%, it's the truth. The reason we're feeling less safe is because there is more crime. That is absolutely happening. And the reason why, as we've looked at it, I've talked to law enforcement officials, district attorneys up and down the state. I haven't talked to a single person in the profession who hasn't said, everyone in it every day believes AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57, those three measures combined have exacerbated the problem. And if you think about it from a common sense perspective, the state prison system was overcrowded, so you shift folks out of the state prison system into county facilities. That's AB 109. Now you don't have any more room in your local county facilities, and you decrease penalties for quality of life related violations. That was Prop 47. There's nowhere to put these folks now, and the violations the rules have changed. And then you add Prop 57, which is the state being able to release more people from state prison system. What you really have at the end of the day there's less criminals in prison, and that just intuitively should point you to the fact that crime will increase a bit. That absolutely is what's happening. And the impact's been widespread. Now, right now today, as local governments, as your sheriff's department, as the city of Monrovia's police department, we have less tools to deter crime. Absolutely, that's a fact. And there's nuance, right? The difference between a felony and a misdemeanor, it's complicated, it's a little bit different. But basically today, theft of less than $950 is a consequence-free crime. Because unless you can get a sworn peace officer to witness that event happening, you basically can't do anything about it. That absolutely is increasing crime. And criminals are smart. They're using tools, technology, to organize theft rings, and they are absolutely coordinating their efforts up and down the San Gabriel Valley. And La Cañada is a prime target, right? It's an affluent community. There's quick access to the 210 freeway to get in and out of the community quickly. There's routes to get in and out. It's a community, I'm sure, that's like similar to Monrovia, trusting of your neighbors. You know, we leave our door, I live in Monrovia, we leave our door unlocked. The world is changing, though, and part of the reason the world's changing is because the rules in California have changed. And so as a group, what do we do now, right? As cities, we've been talking about this. You've got a terrific city manager here in La Cañada who went to USC, a private school in California, in the LA area. We meet regularly, and we all talk about, hey, what's going on in your community, what's going on in our community? And one of the things we noticed was everyone is talking about the same thing. Crime is up everywhere. Every city has their own story about how crime is impacting their neighborhood, their community. And we started thinking, boy, we probably should be thinking about how to respond to this issue a little bit more thoughtfully. And as we talked through it, the first thing I think that we've got to all come to grips with, and the first thing we've got to acknowledge, is that we do live in California, right? And California's got political persuasions that are inherently a little bit more liberal. And while every law enforcement official I've talked to about AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57, every law enforcement official I've talked to has said, yes, those have contributed to the increase in crime in the state, I have talked to very passionate individuals who will argue that that isn't the case, that that is not factual, that California today still has crime levels that are at historic lows, that crime is cyclical in nature, and that you can't peg the increase in crime on what's happened here to the state's criminal justice system. These folks are incredibly passionate about their position. And I think one of the things we were noticing in Monrovia, it was incredibly frustrating. I don't know if anyone here is frustrated with this. Have you noticed that in our society, be it public safety or pick your issue where there isn't consensus, it seems like the extremes get to dominate the conversation, right? That common sense becomes a victim because you've got on the one side folks saying throw everyone in jail, and you've got folks on the other side saying throw nobody in jail. And in that process, you lose all semblance of common sense in talking through really what are serious issues that we need to talk about, that we should acknowledge. That, yes, 109 was put in place. The governor was under orders from the U.S. Department of Justice. Our prison system was filled to capacity. It's over capacity. We needed to address that issue. So does that make logical sense that we should have a discussion about appropriate levels of punishment and incarceration? Yeah, we should have that discussion, certainly. But it's also true that AB 109, Prop 47, and Prop 57 have added and exacerbated the public safety issues in our state. And as the extremes keep battling, what ends up happening is what we noticed in Monrovia is you can't have just a common sense discussion about, hey, there's less prisoners and there's less criminals in prison. Crime is going up. What are we going to do to address it? Everyone's so passionately defending their position that you fail to serve the public. And that was frustrating us in Monrovia. And so our coalition was launched by this public safety reality, that whatever the two sides wanted to argue in Monrovia, here was the fact that since 2015, we've experienced a 22.4% increase in Part 1 crimes. That means annually we have 168 more victims that are being created every single year. And as we talked to other communities, we noticed that was happening everywhere across the San Gabriel Valley. And so a couple of us, the cities of Arcadia, Glendora, and Monrovia, we got together and started talking that, we really need to have a more collected, more thoughtful response, because I'm going to flash this slide up again. This is the reality of what's happening in our region, that crime is increasing in the San Gabriel Valley, that these numbers are not fictional, that since 2014, La Cañada, it's real for La Cañada, there's been a 38% increase in burglaries, that Pasadena has seen a 34% increase in robberies, that assault is up 28% in Montebello. These are factual things, public safety issues that are happening. What are we going to do to address it? And out of that collective angst, we formed a coalition. It's called the Taking Back Our Community Coalition. And we're really a coalition of communities dedicated to improving public safety across California. And really our objectives are, first, let's raise awareness about the why. Because I think everyone's initial reaction is, let's go yell at the mayor and the city council, let's go yell at the police department, let's yell at the sheriff's department, do something. And I can tell you, working with folks in law enforcement, working in a municipal agency, we want to do something. That's not the problem. The problem isn't the desire. The problem is the tools have changed. The rules have changed. Our ability to respond has changed, and we need folks to understand that. We want to advocate for state legislative changes to improve our ability to respond to the issues related to crime. And we needed to be a little bit more consistent in talking about the issues related to 109, 47, and 57. And so you heard Michelle talk about how all three of those pieces of legislation get put together. We actually put a video together, and if you'll bear with me, it's a short video that attempts to weave all three of those issues together into an easier to understand situation.
Our house was broken into. It's the third break-in this month on our street. Why doesn't someone do something about the crime?
Our store was robbed again today. I don't know if we're going to be able to keep our doors open if something doesn't change.
Yes, I'm calling to report a suspicious person loitering on our street. He's been here for hours, and I don't feel safe.
Lately, have you been feeling less safe? Violent and property crime rates have been increasing throughout California over the last few years. And law enforcement officials agree that these increases are happening in part because of recent changes to California's criminal justice system. Instituted through AB 109, Proposition 47, and Proposition 57. It started in 2011 when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that California had to reduce prison overcrowding. This led the state to approve Assembly Bill 109, which improved unsafe conditions and overcrowding in prisons, but did so by transferring tens of thousands of felons convicted of nonviolent crimes back to local jails. And because of a lack of resources needed to house and supervise this increased prisoner population, the sudden influx of new criminals forced local officials to release tens of thousands of lower-level criminals back into our communities. This has certainly had an impact on crime rates in California. Against this backdrop, in 2014, the state then championed the approval of Proposition 47, or the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, which reclassified and downgraded a number of crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. Today, because of Proposition 47, theft under $950 is considered a consequence-free crime, which has made our neighborhoods and schools less safe. Most recently, in 2016, the state championed Proposition 57, which was called the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act. Approval of this measure means that felons convicted of nonviolent crimes can be released early from state prison. But remember, under AB 109, there are no more nonviolent felons in state prison. So who did Proposition 57 make eligible for early release? Because of Proposition 57, felons convicted of these crimes can now be released early. Do these crimes seem nonviolent to you? Taken together, AB 109, Proposition 47, and Proposition 57 did institute important, needed reforms to the state's criminal justice system. However, the new laws have also had negative public safety impacts that should be addressed. Because recent increases in crime won't be solved by hiring more police officers, the problems we're facing can only be solved if the state chooses to make some common sense improvements to our laws so that we can keep the best parts of AB 109, Proposition 47, and Proposition 57, while also being able to effectively deter crime and appropriately punish violent criminals. To learn more, visit www.takingbackourcommunityca.com.
That video is available on our website. The City of La Cañada Flint Ridge is a member of the coalition, and all of this information is available certainly to the public. But it's complicated, right? These three pieces of legislation have all served to effectively change our criminal justice system. And over the last couple of years, as we've worked, one of the things we've started to understand is in California, the state legislature's position to this point in time has been there really isn't a problem. We need a chance for 109, 47, 57 to all take effect so we can get a better sense of really what's happening. And what we've done as a group is we wanted to share with everyone the legislature's position to this point really has been that mass incarceration doesn't work, and we can't at this point add penalties for punishing violent criminals or those that are engaged in serial theft. And what we've listed out is in the 2015 legislative session, the 2016 legislative session, and the next slide, the 2017 legislative session, there have been a number of bills proposed that have died in committee that would have made some common sense changes to give law enforcement a little bit more help in addressing criminal behavior, crime-related issues. So in 2015, SB 1269 was introduced. It died in committee. If it was approved, it would have reclassified human trafficking as a violent crime. The state didn't want to take action on that particular matter. In 2016, two pieces of legislation, AB 2287 and SB 75, were both introduced. 2287 would have allowed aggregation of multiple thefts for felony prosecution, basically to address 47, that if you steal things multiple times, at some point it becomes a felony. It's no longer a misdemeanor. That died in committee, as did SB 75, which would have reclassified both human trafficking and assault with a deadly weapon as violent crimes. So the state decided those weren't actions they wanted to take. But notice this, in 2017, look at how many pieces of legislation were introduced. Sacramento's hearing that there's an issue, right? And they hear these issues, and you can track it by the number of bills that legislators introduce. And in 2017, there were multiple pieces of legislation introduced to address a slew of public safety issues. AB 1326 to prosecute theft as a felony if you have a prior theft conviction. Today, there's really no such thing as petty theft with a prior anymore. This would have addressed that issue. That died in committee. AB 392, felony prosecution of theft if it's part of an organized theft ring. That died in committee, didn't make it out. AB 27, rape of an unconscious person should be a violent crime. I think we'd all agree on that. That bill died in committee. AB 67, reclassifying human trafficking or trafficking humans for the sex trade industry. Make that a violent crime. That died in committee. AB 197 died in committee, as did SB 652 and SB 770. The state, though, is noticing. Legislators are noticing, and additional bills are making their way through the process. And that's a good thing. The bad news is we haven't been able to get these bills out of committee. And really, I think for us, as part of the Taking Back Our Community Coalition, what we advocate for is some common sense. We don't think that we should do away with 109, 47, 57. I mean, these were pieces of legislation that were enacted for legitimate purposes and legitimate public policy concerns. But we do believe that we need to make some changes because that pendulum, maybe it swung too far to the law and order side, maybe it didn't, but our opinion, it's definitely swung too far into the other end of the discussion. And today, we're not holding individuals accountable for their actions. Because when you aggregate everything in California today, theft of less than $950 is a consequence-free crime. It just is. You can steal, just don't steal more than $950, and you'll be fine. You can make a pretty good living that way. Violent felons can violate parole. You heard the issue of Mr. Mejia, who violated parole 5 times, never was sent back to prison, and ended up killing Officer Boyer and Whittier. Violent convicted felons can violate their parole repeatedly and never be sent back to prison. That's happening today. And felons convicted of just horrible crimes. Michelle hit on domestic violence. That's the one in Monrovia we highlight a lot, that it's got violent in the name and it's not a violent crime. How is that possible? But other crimes like rape of an unconscious person, trafficking a child for sex, solicitation to commit murder, these aren't considered violent crimes today. And if you commit one of those felonies, you can still get out of prison early, which we think there's a problem with. And ultimately, I think the questions facing the state that our coalition really wants to ask is, should serial theft activity never have any consequence? Should you be able to steal repeatedly with no consequences? Should convicted felons be allowed to violate the terms of their parole repeatedly without significant consequence? And should violent criminals be eligible for early release? Our coalition thinks the answer to those questions is no, because really we analyze the issue. If hiring 1 or 2 or 3 more police officers would solve the issue, we would have done that already. The problem's we just don't have the resources to hire enough police officers to put somebody on every street 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so if we're gonna make any substantive improvements to public safety in California, we need the state legislators' help. We need the state legislative process to make some additional adjustments and make some changes. And so our coalition's been growing. It started out with just 3 cities, and it's slowly grown. Today we've got 37 cities, and we're growing. We've been invited to go out to San Bernardino County and Orange County. We'll be out there the next couple of weeks. We've talked to folks in Northern California who are experiencing the same type of crime patterns as we are. And this is an issue I think that resonates with folks. I was talking with Michelle before the discussion, and it's really just you tell people the facts, and people are shocked. What do you mean rape of an unconscious person is not a violent crime? It's shocking. And I think that's why our coalition has been growing so rapidly, because I think the position we advocate for is one that does make sense, that we need some common sense back into our criminal justice system. Michelle touched on the Keeping California Safe Act of 2018. I just wanted to plug it one more time. The Keep California Safe Act of 2018 is a piece of legislation where we're currently connecting signatures. We're currently out raising money. I've talked to the California Grocers Association a ton about this issue. They're one of the biggest sponsors of the bill, because did you know that grocery stores are one of the hardest hit industries because of 47 today? There are people that walk into a grocery store in Monrovia. I talked to the owner. We have a Baja Ranch market every day. Same guy walks in every single day, grabs what he wants and walks out, and there's nothing the store can do about it. And as a city official, it's horrible, but we can't station a police officer there 24 hours a day to keep watch. We need to be able to have some ability to address those issues. Keep California Safe Act of 2018, it does that. Please go on the website. Please help us spread the word through social media. We think this is going to be an effective way to address some of the initial issues that we're dealing with here in California on the public safety front. And really, you've got some terrific representatives in the state legislature. We encourage you, in every community that we talk to, encourage folks to contact their state legislative representatives. Tell them how you feel. That I think Assemblymember Friedman was going to be here tonight. She represents a tiny little part of Monrovia, but does a great job representing our region. We need to make sure that our reps know how we feel about public safety issues. I know you've got particular pool here in La Cañada Flint Ridge with Senator Portantino. I understand he's a resident, and I think he's here tonight. Anthony does just a terrific job representing Monrovia and La Cañada Flint Ridge, but I think part of the message that and part of the ammunition that they need is support from local communities to say, hey, my communities in my district have had it. We need to do something about these issues. And ultimately, we think by working together, we think by advocating for a common sense approach to addressing public safety issues, we can make some real lasting improvements so that hopefully when the next budget discussion comes up, and a discussion about adding additional police resources, that's something that can actually make a tangible difference. And so appreciate the time tonight, and I know there'll be a question and answer period later.
So thank you again, Oliver. Appreciate it. Very insightful and very helpful. So as we move through our program this evening, we've talked at the local level, county level, regional level. We're fortunate enough that our legislators are here. They came down from Sacramento, so we appreciate it. So our very own Senator Portantino is here, legislator, and was also a member of the Assembly and also a 2-term city council member. So anyway, Anthony, appreciate you coming down.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and I live a half a block away, so I am a resident, and it was very nice to listen to the presentation, and Oliver did a great job. I think he did a really nice presentation of how the conversation has been taken over by the extremes, and how it's hard to have that sort of middle-of-the-road, reasonable conversation, and frankly, it's one of the reasons why I get beat up from both sides, because oftentimes I'm the one saying, let's have that conversation. And when he was talking about all those bills that died in committee, years ago I was on the Public Safety Committee and I was taken off because I'd say, well, we really actually need to do this one. And after I caused too much of a ruckus, they took me off the Public Safety Committee. And when AB 109 was going through the system, we're blessed now that the voters also passed Prop 54, which says bills need to be in print for 3 days. Many of you probably voted for that. One of the biggest reasons why that proposal had inertia was because of AB 109, which showed up in the middle of the night, 900-page total rewriting of the entire criminal justice system, and it didn't have a public safety committee hearing, and so it got put through the process. And luckily, my staff had red flagged it, and we actually read through it, and we saw some of the unintended consequences, so I did not support AB 109. That being said, as Oliver talked about, we as a state were in a position where we had to do something. That was the hasty solution, and I wish we would have had Prop 54 at the time, so we could have put more time into it. Hearing from the community, and it's another point that was made, is very important. We respond to the input, the emails, and you all, of course, know how to get in touch with me, and everybody lets me know. With that said, there's a couple things going on legislatively this year. And actually, I want to talk about the license plate readers that you guys just bought. There is a push in Sacramento, and it's a bipartisan push, to allow citizens to mask their license plates so you can't read their license plates. And that bill actually died this year. It had bipartisan support and it had bipartisan opposition. So it's important that we don't let that pass where we can't read people's license plates. I'm really pleased to see that the Sheriff's Department is doing Narcan. That's awesome. That's really, really important because there are too many ODs, and as you know, the opioid epidemic is just national, and it is touching the foothills as well. So it's great to see that here. I don't know if you remember Prop 30 that was on the ballot a few years ago. It was about saving schools, but a piece of Prop 30 also tried to help fund prison realignment. The problem with the funding mechanism is it all went to the county, so it doesn't go directly to law enforcement, and that was a problem. And that not only did we send the problem down, but we didn't send the resources down to help fight the issue. Another thing that compounds this issue is California has the highest recidivism rate in the world. Let me say that again. California has the highest recidivism rate in the world. It's 70%. And so when I first got elected to the Assembly, I was told that every day we release 300 inmates, but we returned 308. And that was leading to the prison crowding. And so when you hear people talk about the rehab part, the parole part, the rehabilitation part, it is part of the conversation that needs to be funded, because you cannot have a sustainable system where 7 out of 10 people who get released go back. And so we have to make sure we fund both sides of the conversation. With that, there's 2 ways solutions can become law. One is, as you heard, there's a signature gathering for an initiative. The other way is for legislation to pass through the system. You just saw a list of bills that all died in committee. It's hard to get a bill through committee in this day and age that is reasonable and needed. I have been working for the last month with the California Police Chiefs Association, and we've come up with something specifically for the residential burglary portion. I have a copy of the bill, which any of the lawyers want, I can give out. I gave a copy to Mark Alexander, and this is what the police chiefs and my office have come up with. It's SB 1266. It will be in print on the 18th, but the amendments were processed. So SB 1266, in order to protect our communities from those who have committed multiple burglaries, we've introduced this legislation which will do the following. It will require that anyone with a prior burglary offense who is subsequently convicted of a second-degree burglary entering an uninhabited dwelling will serve a mandatory minimum of 180 days in county jail. This ensures that these individuals will have shown, who have shown a dangerous and repetitive criminal behavior do not get released right back into the community. The other piece it will do, it will require anyone convicted of a burglary to be subject to a GPS monitoring system as a condition of parole. That way we'll be able to track where these people are. This is what the police chiefs have come up with as something we think we have a chance of getting out of committee to deal with that specific issue. Now, the reason why we've broken out burglaries is there's another effort going on through the legislature. Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez from San Diego, who chairs the Appropriations Committee, which is a very powerful committee, and she's got a lot of clout on the Assembly side. She is working, again, with the Police Chiefs Association and other law enforcement to try to do a legislative initiative to catch what Prop 56 never defined as nonviolent felons. So what she's trying to do, and I'm going to support her efforts. I wanted to put the burglary piece in it, which she didn't want to do. She wanted to go after the violent felons, which I don't begrudge her from doing. So this is what that's going to do. It's going to get the sex offenders that were released. I'll give you the background. So earlier this year, Sacramento County Superior Court Judge Alan Sumner issued a preliminary order for prison officials to rewrite part of the regulations for Prop 57. So that had to deal with nonviolent felons. The catch, Prop 57 never defined what a nonviolent felon offense was, and despite promises that sex offenders would be kept behind bars for longer stints due to the added regulations, they were released. And so Gonzalez-Fletcher is proposing a constitutional amendment. Now, if 2/3 of the legislature vote for it, it goes on the ballot and it bypasses the governor. So it doesn't need the governor's signature. And so this is another attempt to augment the efforts that they're doing with their signature gathering. So as that moves through the system, you should all support that, because that's another effort to try to help. And then locally, as you know, we also have the suicide prevention. We're doing a lot on that, and I know our school folks are here. I put in a bill to make sure that all of our student IDs have a suicide hotline number on it. And working with the city and Mark Alexander and your city attorney, Mark Steris, we've put in a bill on the 6-bed residential facilities, again, to try to come up with some reasonable controls. And I tell you those stories because out of the conversation, we can try to craft some of these things to help. And that's why I flew down today, not only just to tell you about some of the things that I was doing, but I also wanted to hear the conversation and hear the presentation from Oliver and others. So I'm not going anywhere. I'll sit here all night and listen to everybody. If you have a good idea, I'm happy to try to put it in through the system. I'm, respected on the law enforcement side because I try to weigh both sides and try not to fall in the extremes, which don't ever get through the middle. With that, I guess we're going to take questions later, Mark? Is that how it's going to work? But I live here. I'm a resident. We need to have rational heads come together to try to figure this out. If anybody wants a copy of the legislation, I've got it here. We think it's got a chance of getting through. We think the GPS monitoring will make a difference. Let law enforcement have tools to track these repeat burglary folks. Let's mandate a minimum sentence so they're not just a revolving door and get out. But the statistics can be used in multiple ways. The consent decree was real. Again, I did not support AB 109, but had it come up for a longer period of time in print, I think people would have seen some of the flaws, and that's why we have Prop 54 to help it. So City of La Cañada does a great job. Our Sheriff's Department, and everybody talks about bringing in their own police department. One of the beauties of the Sheriff's contract is all of those additional resources are built into the contract. And so when we do have these spikes in crime, we get the additional resources without having to pay additional money for it. So the contract has served the city well, and I think it does. I think we would be in worse shape without the resources of the LA County Sheriff's Department. With that, thanks for letting me come share, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
And our Assembly member, Laura Friedman, was on her way. Unfortunately, her flight was delayed. So her representative, Blake Dillinger, is here. He's going to give a brief statement on her behalf.
I know what you guys are thinking. You're probably thinking, Assembly member, I thought you were taller and a woman. This is California, though, so anything can happen. So Assemblymember Friedman, these are issues, she was a city council member over in Glendale before entering the assembly. And these are issues that she has really fought on, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So she is really sorry that she could not be here. Her flight was delayed 2 hours. She would have been leaving at 7:30, and hopefully we'll all be gone by then. So I wanted to read a statement that she sent to me right away, that she wanted you to hear about her positions on these issues. I'm very sorry that due to a flight delay, I will not be able to attend this very important discussion tonight. I would like to thank the Public Safety Commission, the City of La Cañada Flint Ridge, and the Sheriff's Department, and most importantly, the community, for your proactive stance on public safety. There is nothing more valuable to a city than a community such as yours. This is something I truly admire as your representative in Sacramento. When polled, there is one single issue that the public across economic and geographic lines consistently ranks as their top priority, and that's public safety. For this reason, I see it as my mandate as an elected official to equally focus on safety as my top concern. This is a community where people didn't have to lock their doors, and now they do. And I can't read my own writing. This is a community where people had to lock their doors, and this has changed. And a large part of this responsibility is on the California State Assembly and Senate. And it's a responsibility that the California State Assembly and Senate now have to own up to. The issue of property crime touches on a larger range of issues, such as realignment, anti-recidivism, and increased drug addiction. These are issues that she has been working on as well before she arrived in the legislature. Like many of the key issues we face at the local and state levels, rising crime is the result of a wide variety of systemic problems that we have to address. Factors such as poverty rates, lack of access to education, Housing, mental health services, and yes, legislation together all contribute to an increase or decrease in overall crime, as well as the types of crimes that are committed. As I said, in agreement with our law enforcement officers, legislation is a component that we need to look at. In 2011, while serving on the Glendale City Council and as the president of the Independent Cities Association, I lobbied heavily in Sacramento against AB 109 and Prop 47, measures that I saw would and have proven to be detrimental to our criminal justice system. AB 109 was a bad idea then, and it is now. Realignment has filled our county jails that were not designed for the long-term holding of these prisoners. It also overly burdened cities with the fiscal and human costs of our state's crime. Non-revocable parole has had the same result. This component of AB 109 allows parolees to slip back into a cycle of crime without repercussions. It doesn't work for anyone involved. I was against it then, and I am still against it, and I warned the legislator at that time, and now I'm going to do my best to fix these problems that the legislator has left us with. Proposition 47 and 57 went too far in reducing the penalties for nonviolent crimes. Without the threat of prison, Prop 36 has become meaningless. It has taken away a means to compel those who have been caught with drug offenses from completing treatment. It has also harmed our communities by reducing crimes that, while nonviolent, still cause serious harm to the lives of others and to ourselves. I was a small business owner, and I wouldn't have been able to survive being passed a bad check. These are serious crimes that should be treated seriously. Many families have been left out of the economic recovery of our state, just as the criminals have. And a family struggling to make ends meet can face almost insurmountable challenges if they fall victim to such crimes. Like many of our issues, crime is often too politicized. I believe being tough on crime and protecting our neighborhoods is not a bipartisan issue, it's a nonpartisan issue. Crime affects everyone equally. We all share the costs. Lack of penalties is also unfair to offenders. If we lock up offenders without providing adequate drug treatment, mental health care, or meaningful rehabilitation programs, we can't be surprised when they reoffend. Our goal of our criminal justice system is not to permanently segregate all who commit crimes, but to provide motivation and opportunities to rehabilitate and join our society. We need to stop setting inmates up for failure, and we need to stop putting the public at risk. We need to stop putting forth legislation that does this. We also have a duty to remind the public that our law enforcement officers are here for us. They are not our enemies. We also need to avoid the divisive rhetoric that our law enforcement officers hear, unfortunately, on a daily basis, that broadly labels them because of a few unfortunate incidents or stories that are overly perpetuated in the news. Crime has a cost. The cost on the community far outweighs what we could be spending to properly fund law enforcement agencies for better hiring, equipment, and infrastructure. And we can't keep trying to fix our prison problem by reducing penalties for what are actually serious crimes. Punishment was never our problem was rehabilitation. We need to focus more on the services and resources necessary to turn that person who broke into your house into one of your most upstanding neighbors. We need to actually help break the cycle of crime, not perpetuate it. But it is also critical that we look at other areas of our society where we are failing, and thus exacerbating our crime problem. I support all efforts at the state and local levels to improve education of offenders, drug counseling, and social services for both offenders and their families. We also need to look at more ways to provide opportunities and means for the recently released to enter the job market. We need to help ensure that law enforcement agencies are properly funded and have all the tools they need to increase interdepartment communications and training, something that this area does quite well, but other areas across the state don't do as well. We also need to increase and support and awareness for early intervention programs, such as the Explorer and STARS programs, which has been suffering in attendance. You can join and form a neighborhood watch, and finally, you do need to advocate for laws and legislators that allow the courts to set punishments that are serious enough to deter and compel offenders to seek rehabilitation, education, and place in the workforce. We can all do our part. One of Assemblymember Friedman's bills this year that she wanted to introduce to you, because of so much of the crime is drug-related, I have introduced a bill, AB 3162, Alcoholism or Drug Abuse Recovery or Treatment Facilities, to help address the concentration of alcohol or drug abuse recovery centers in our communities. This bill requires that the State Department of Health Care Services limit the number of drug abuse and recovery facilities within an area recovery centers are beneficial when properly regulated. Oftentimes, sober living homes are not what they seem, and they concentrate addicts or potential serial offenders. So that's one thing I know came up in a city council meeting a couple months ago, and that's one of the areas that we need to look into. And this is what I'm talking about, is Assemblymember Friedman wants to take every issue and look at it one by one and see what we can do, as well as working with Senator Portantino in some of these pieces of legislation. So in closing, I would like to encourage you to look into the Crime and Keep California Safe Act of 2018, the ballot initiative supported by the Los Angeles Police Protective League and ALADS. This is a measure to seek to make up for the failings of Prop 47, 57, and AB 109, and this is a measure that Assemblymember Friedman is certainly supportive of and hopes you will be too. So thank you guys very much for this time.
Thanks, Blake. I noticed we're running a few minutes behind, so I appreciate everyone's patience. If you'd stay with us, we do have some good closing items to go over. So if it's possible, bear with us and we'll get through it as quickly as possible. And just so you know, nobody wins the jet ski. It's my pleasure to introduce Stephanie English. Stephanie is the Justice Deputy for LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger. She's going to make a few comments on the Los Angeles County Blue Ribbon Commission on Public Safety. Stephanie?
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll be very brief so we can get to questions. I know that's very important. Supervisor Barger would love to be here tonight. She is in Washington, D.C., working on some very important things for our county, so I'm here on her behalf. I wanted to talk to you about the Blue Ribbon Commission, of which Mayor Davitt is a part of that effort and one of our commissioners. We appreciate his time along with the other commissioners. This commission came together as a result of two important murders. One was of Deputy Steve Owen up in the Antelope Valley, who was murdered by an AB 109er, and the other was Keith Boyer from Whittier Police Department. The following year, Steve Owen was 2016, and Officer Boyer was killed in 2017 by an AB 109er as well. So as a result of those two murders, the supervisor looked into the supervision that was provided to those gentlemen. And following that report, she decided to take the next step and establish the Blue Ribbon Commission that was supported by Supervisor Janice Hahn in the 4th District. That effort is now underway. We've had what, Mike, where are you out there? Five meetings? 5 meetings, okay. We're now getting into this subcommittee work that's really burrowing down into the issues that hopefully will produce some results. But the goal of that Blue Ribbon Commission was to put together a very diverse group of individuals from both sides of the aisle. And what you'll hear, and what we've heard tonight, and what you hear out in the newspapers, and you do your research and your reading, is that on the one side, people are saying, well, these public safety policies and initiatives have really helped people reform and transform. And on the other side, you're hearing that there's a lot of crime. So the supervisors decided to put, I should say increase crime, put together a diverse group to look at these issues and hopefully come up with some agreement. Now, let me say this, and it's been touched on by some of the other speakers. Just for argument's sake, let's say that under Prop 47, some folks have had their sentences reduced or their crimes reduced. They were offered expungement of their records. They got jobs. They're taking care of their families. They're motivated to stay crime-free. And if that is true, and I'm not saying it is, but if it's true, then that's working on the one side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, there's a lot of committed criminals who know exactly what they're doing and how to do it. And you heard tonight about the minimum of $950. They know not to break the law over that $950 maximum, and they can keep doing this over and over again. So what you'll hear the supervisor say as she talks about these issues is that these two sides are, let me back up, the Blue Ribbon Commission is looking at rehabilitative efforts, what we're doing, what's working, how we can know what the best practices are, how we can collect data to know how people actually transform and renew their lives and steer clear of the criminal justice system. And the other side is what has happened as part of these public safety policies and initiatives, and what are the unintended consequences, and what do we need to do to mitigate some of these unintended consequences. And so she will tell you that these things are not mutually exclusive. We can work on both. We don't have to be in an argument to settle a black and white definitive, come to a definitive agreement. Let's work on both sides of the coin. The county spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year in programs and services for offenders. And we need to understand what's working, what's not working, and how better to spend that money. The last thing that I would like to say is, as you all know, you're represented here by Supervisor Barger, who is a proponent of law enforcement. Don't be afraid to, and don't forget to write the other supervisors and let them know what your concerns are, what you're seeing, what you wish to happen, what you're supporting in these public safety reforms. And let your voice be heard. It really does make a difference. They really do pay attention to what the LA County constituency is looking for. And last, I just want to thank the Sheriff's Department. They are doing a fantastic job. Captain Blasnick was very much supported by the supervisor in this position, and we know he's really in tune with what's happening and his team, and so we support their efforts. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate that very much. Now we're going to have Deputy Eric Matejka come up. Eric is Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He's also our city liaison deputy and school resource officer for La Cañada High School. So, Eric.
Hi, I'm Deputy Matejka, and I'm with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I currently serve the city of La Cañada Flint Ridge as a special assignment deputy. This video is being produced to help you learn how to prevent burglaries. The unfortunate reality is that every day criminals drive our streets looking for opportunities to commit crimes. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you steps you can take to prevent burglaries to your house or vehicle. The first step is to never leave your valuables in an easily accessible location. For example, leaving bicycles, hand tools, electronics, or building supplies in an open garage or in your front yard creates an easy opportunity for criminals to steal them. Garages with internal doors leading into your home are also very attractive to prospective burglars. So please be sure to always close and lock both the external and internal garage doors. And if you have gates, please keep them closed also. In addition to not leaving things out in front of your house, you should take steps to secure your home when you leave. Lock your doors and windows. Things like deadbolts and window locks, which you can get from your local home improvement store, make it much more difficult for the criminals to gain access. And because it slows down the criminal, it often acts as a deterrent. Taking the simple step of placing a dowel in the window frame or sliding glass door rails adds extra security to your home. Doing so could make the difference between the burglar gaining access to your home or moving on to another location. Do not leave ladders, boxes, or other items around your home or garage which could be used to gain access to the upper levels of your home. Also, remember that just because a window is not on the ground floor, that a criminal cannot access it. Be sure to always lock your upper windows and doors. Another helpful step you can take is to engrave your California driver's license number on your valuables. Additionally, you should keep a record of any serial numbers of your valuables to assist you in identifying property in the event it is ever stolen. If you use a safe to secure your valuables, be sure to use one that's heavy and large enough so that it cannot be easily removed. For extra assurance, have the safe bolted to the floor to ensure the criminal cannot easily remove it. Small safes, like these, are generally fire safes and are easily concealed and removed from your home. While useful for protecting documents and other items from flames, they will not prevent criminals from taking them and items inside. Be sure your pathways, parking areas, and areas surrounding your home are lit with motion detector or darkness detection lights. Criminals don't want to be seen, and it also makes it safer for you to move around the outside of your house in the dark. The price of security alarms and cameras have dropped dramatically in the recent years and serve as excellent deterrents for preventing crime and quite possibly capturing a thief. Home security systems have helped deputies identify criminals, leading to their arrests and the recovery of stolen property. Also, the posting of surveillance signs often deters criminals from entering that residence. Do not leave iPods, iPads, portable computers, cell phones, purses, briefcases, portable GPS units, or other valuables visible from outside your vehicle. Even if you're parking for just a few minutes while you run into the store, it only takes a criminal a second to break your window and steal your property. Unfortunately, today it doesn't matter if you're parked at work, in a shopping center, at the gym, or even your own front driveway. The reality is that vehicles are a preferred target of criminals. When they see that a valuable is just a glass pane away, they will not hesitate to take it. Even if we do everything right, we can still become the victim of a crime. However, by taking these practical steps, we are making your property much less attractive for a criminal, and also making it more difficult for them to take your valuables. If you do find yourself the victim of a burglary, leave the area immediately and call 911. Deputies will come out, make sure the residence is safe for you to re-enter, and collect any evidence the criminals may have left. Another proactive step you can take to prevent burglaries in your neighborhood is to report any suspicious people. Please call us, 818-248-3464, or if it's emergent, 911. If you leave town and go on vacation, let your neighbors know so they can keep an eye on your house. Or you can call the Sheriff's Department and we can do vacation checks of your home. If you're interested in implementing a neighborhood watch program in your area, please call us at the same number, 818-248-3464, and a deputy will come out and assist you with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for all coming tonight. I have a unique job. I've been here for about 16 years, and I get to work with the city manager and meet with him regularly, the safety commission. I have a great captain and a great detective sergeant, and I meet with these people on a regular basis. And I take all that information and I meet with these new neighborhood watch groups. And neighborhood watch group is basically, we try to get about 20 houses together, and they're all people who are work together to make sure their area is safe. We want, sorry, I lost my note. I tell the people that they're all experts in their community, because when they talk about they want another radio car or extra patrols, this or that, I tell them, you know, you guys are all driving down the streets, you're going to schools, you're going to the restaurant or whatever, and when you see something, you should say something. If you're, when you get done, when you're there, and you think that you're gonna say something to your wife or your husband or your kids or something like that, that's when you guys need to call us. When you do make your phone call, you need to call the normal number, 248-3464, or you can call the 911 number. Deputies would much, much rather come out to you and take your report and talk to the person that they're dealing with in the street than take a report for something when something gets stolen. The things we teach at the meetings, we talk about alarm systems, and we're finding that alarm systems, when people have those, they're seeing less of a loss to their property that way. With the alarms going off, we ask that you guys have your alarm company call us first, because the problem with them calling you, it delays it. Most of the crimes that are being done are being committed in a short time period, 5 to 15 minutes, and they're gone. If you wind up having them call us first, we get there much quicker and we're able to catch people. During the meetings, we wind up talking about identity theft, theft from vehicles, the different scams with green dot cards, things like that. Also, when people are getting together at these meetings, a lot of them don't really know who their neighbors are. They may be living there anywhere from 1 month to 15 years, and when they come together, it's a team effort between them and us coming together and trying to capture these guys. It's a great program with respect to catching these guys. I've had numerous people who've joined neighborhood watch groups come together, and they come up and they tell me afterwards, hey, something you guys said at the meeting made me call you guys. And that's how we wind up catching these criminals doing these acts. And that's what I've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. In order to keep things moving, we're going to roll it to question and answers. And I think Marilyn's got some question cards. And can the panel come up and sit up here, please? If I can read people's writing. You might need to stay close. All right, well, thanks. So I think the first question, which we can all touch upon, is it it time to revisit having some cameras in major intersections and at entry points to our city as other cities have done? And I'll touch upon that for a minute because it's kind of a policy standpoint, but then I'll let the sheriff comment on that as well. And the Public Safety Commission, we have looked at that and we continue to look at that. As you know, our city has many entrance and exit points, including freeway entrances. So it is difficult to manage that. The approach that we have taken is consistent with what the Public Safety Commission recommended, which was the mobile automated license plate readers on the police cars. So we've increased that. But at the budget time, at our city budget time, the council is going to look at that. Terry, did you have any follow-up on that?
Yeah, regarding the cameras on the intersections, we did some evaluation on it, just cursory, and we determined at that time we ended up investing our resources into the Ring program and the Ring rebate. We saw the significant impact it had when they saturated a neighborhood like Hancock Park with the Ring device. And in 1 year, they were able to compare and contrast and show just a dramatic decrease in crime in that area that was covered with Ring. So at that time, we made the recommendation to City Council, and they continue to support it, and we're going back for phase 3 of our Ring rebate program. So we do believe in the surveillance element. Right now, we're focusing our surveillance element more on the personal home residents.
Thank you. So the next one I think is directed to the sheriff. If someone reports a person in the neighborhood with no apparent purpose, and the caller knows that the person doesn't live in the area, and there has been recent burglaries, is that enough for the sheriff to detain the person? And if not, what else is needed?
Yeah, during the Neighborhood Watch program, we wind up telling people to describe what they see. And again, I went back to the telling what your husband or whoever is you're relating a story to. If someone is walking their dog down the street, that's something normal. If you see someone who's walking slowly by a driveway, looking into cars, backing up, looking into other houses they've just gone by, those are kind of things that we want to see. Their actions, if they're slouched down in a car seat, things like that where it's unusual. They might be looking over their shoulder up and down the streets a bunch of times, using a cell phone and sitting at a street corner for a while and looking around. Those are kind of things we're looking at people doing.
Thank you. Next question. If recent propositions have rebuked once effective deterrence, how realistically can we as a small community make a difference? Can we enact our own more harsh deterrent measures or penalties to make criminals know not to mess with this city? I don't know if Oliver or Maureen,
That would be
you want
great. How do we do that? No. Is it cold in here, or is it just me? Holy cow!
It is
No.
freezing.
Right? No, I think on that note, the challenge again, and you heard the Sheriff's Department reps talk about this extensively. We need to make sure everything we do is legal, right? And that constitutionally we're following the rules that are set based on what Prop 47, Prop 57 did. Those are the current rules that are in effect. And we have to follow those rules. We need to make sure we're doing things by the law. That's the social commitment we all make. How we make our voice louder, though, is by joining together, right? The city of Monrovia's got about 40,000 people, and us by ourselves, we can't do very much alone. But you start adding cities like La Cañada, like Arcadia, like Duarte, and now we've got 37 members and growing. That's a lot of people that live in those communities, a lot of, and actually Anthony probably can answer this, or the senator can answer this.
You can call me Anthony.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Anthony. That the more we are working together, the larger our coalition, the more I think the state gets the message. And that's part of the reason why I think we wanted to be here tonight, why we appreciate the chance to work with La Cañada as part of our coalition.
I'm just going to answer the question with regard to whether or not the city council could pass its own harsher rules. The legal answer to that is no. It would be preempted by any state laws that are passed. So as much as we might like our city council members and mayor to just get in there and change things, it really has to be done at the state level.
And if I can jump in on the community coalition side, it's true. I mean, the more allies you have, the more people articulating the need for change, the more likely you are to get change. I mean, that's just how the process works, and you know, legislators need to feel it and see it and hear it as regularly as you can offer your opinions. And you know, when you see a politician, don't hesitate to go up and talk to them. And if they don't want to talk to you, vote them out of office.
Thanks. Next question. Can you talk about volunteer deputy patrols operating in neighboring cities like in Sierra Madre, and why there is none here? Would it help with crime, not just the parades?
Well, actually, we do have volunteer patrol. In fact, we were about 5 or 6 deep just last Thursday night. They're called reserve deputies. They work for $1 a year, and we even tax that dollar. They get 76 cents a year to be exact. I have an active group here at La Cañada Flint Ridge and at Crescenta Valley Station. They have stepped up to the plate also, and those are many of the people you've seen out there in the black and whites. Now, during the day, they may have a different profession. They may be a doctor, they may be an attorney, they may be work in a warehouse, but these are professionals that would like to also be a police officer, just don't want to do it on a 40-hour-a-week basis. So they donate 20 hours a month. That's where I came from, Reserve Forces Bureau, before I came to the city. We have approximately 600 in the county. Some are trained less than others. They're the ones that a lot of us get to watch the Rose Parade every year. A lot of those are reserve deputies are walking the streets of the parade. I have been using them. In fact, we're borrowing them from other stations too to augment what we have. Chief Parra here has just put together a reserve task force county-wide to go around and attack problems in various communities as they arise. And that's free to you, it's free to the community. I have them out here several times a week, so some of those extra cars you have been seeing are absolutely reserve deputies working for 76 cents a year.
All right, thank you. Are you seeing an increase in commercial, I'm anticipating burglars, locations as well, break-ins and crimes? Are we seeing a lot of the focus has been on the residential side, but are you seeing an increase, and I guess specifically more to La Cañada, but I guess there could be a regional question as well, but on the commercial side, the business side?
We have seen an increase in window break-ins on the Foothill Boulevard. Recently, we had 3 in one night, which was alarming to us. Approximately 4 or 5 months ago, I had a deputy who was driving by the Wingstop there on Verdugo and saw a guy crouch down while he's watching his buddies burglarize the Wingstop. Caught almost all of them, but they are out there and they are increasing. We advise the commercial owners in the city to leave their cash registers open so the commercial burglars will see the registers have nothing in them and will not steal them or try to break into them to see what they can get. But yes, it is a problem. It is on the uptick, and they seem to come and go. We had a few last month, but again, I can usually count them on one hand.
Okay, thank you. I think this is for our law enforcement folks as well. So historically, are homes with gates being burglarized? Additionally, I guess it's a two-part question. Are 911 calls from cell phones directed to the correct call centers, or should 911 calls be made from local landlines?
So the 911 calls go to your local center from wherever you're at. So you can feel free to call from the cell phones 911 in your residence or somewhere that is from wherever you're at. You can call; it'll direct you to the nearest 911 location or the call center. The first part of the question, I don't recall it. What was that?
About gates, homes with gates.
So gates are a good deterrent. However, criminals don't necessarily discriminate. They will, a gate is a deterrent, but they will still go over a gate. So what you want to do is you want to tie in security so that you have multiple layers. You want your security system, you want your gate, then you want your landscaping, you want your lighting, you want your alarms. If you do all that and you have a community neighborhood watch, between all of those things, then you're much better protected than just having the gate and nothing else, or just having something and nothing else. So what you want to do is have layers. If you have layers of security, it's much more difficult for these burglars and or criminals to defeat the full system.
Okay, perfect. There's maybe there's a couple of follow-ups to this, but please talk about what is a good effective fence in light of the recent break-ins, not just a closed gate, like the height, the spikes, etc., which you kind of touched upon, but
you know what we need. I was just from this angle, the chief looks sort of like John Cena, and I was like, we need like wrestlers in our every single. No. No,
So
chief.
with gates, again, there's so many gates that are good for security. I always recommend a gate that is at least 6 feet or higher, 6 foot being the minimum, because if you, our academy, we have a wall that you have to get over and gates you have to get over, and they're 6 feet, and you'd be surprised how many people cannot get over them. 6 feet takes some stamina to get over, it takes some strength, and it takes a little bit of style. The thing that I suggest with gates is that you have the gate to whatever your city will allow you to, which is generally 6 feet. Some cities are more, and then you can have some of your your hedges that go above that. And if you have a lighting system that then will alert to the gates, or you can have your lighting system so they're set up for about every 10, 15 feet. As soon as you have a motion detector, it'll flash, and now you've got a bulletproof system. But a lot of times, just a hedge around the gate that'll bring it up a little bit and gives it some depth behind the gate, because gates generally aren't that deep. So if you have a 3-foot hedge there, either before or after it, it is a very, very significant deterrent.
All right, thank you. Next question, which is still follow up on this: are dogs a good deterrent? And additionally, do criminals read local papers to know that La Cañada is an easy target?
Sure.
Yeah.
So dogs are a great deterrent. You just have to remember, just a dog on its own that barks is a deterrent enough for, I don't know if there's an average criminal, but I'm going to say for your person that just wants to get in and out, as soon as they hear a dog barking, they realize, okay, that's not the easiest target. I'm going to move on to something easier. If you have somebody that really wants to get into your house or has some determination, what they do with dogs is you bring dog treats, you bring all kinds of different things, and then the dog is now all of a sudden compliant. So it's very difficult to train your dog not to take food from a stranger. So the answer to the question is dogs are valuable, but they can be defeated. So again, what I'm trying to emphasize here is dogs are part of an overall security system, and they're one layer. I think if we get to where you're 3 or 4 layers deep, now you're going to be able to withstand compromise, and that's what you want to do.
Okay, perfect. And I'll give the Sheriff Department one more question. In the past, there has been confusion and sometimes disinterest in taking a report of stolen mail. Has the training reached all the deputies of the requirement needed to take the reports? I don't know how you report stolen mail.
I get that. Some people may feel that mail theft isn't that big of a deal, but mail theft is a big deal. Number one, it is a crime. Number two, it does lead to identity theft. Number three, it could lead to stolen credit cards, which becomes forgery. And number four, it could be your checks arriving in the mail. So it's very important. It's very important that we know the crime trends. That's how I work, is I go off of crime trends with my crime analyst. So if I'm getting reports, some people think, oh, it's just my mail, I won't report it. Please do, because we know where to be. If there's a certain street that's being hit, we'll know to be there, and we'll put it out to everybody, and we'll brief it. So everything, especially in La Cañada, it's all about our quality of life. Report the little things. There's no call too small here in the city, okay?
Yeah, I want to add to that too. It's not just your incoming mail that you have to worry about. It's your outgoing mail. If you guys are putting your mail into the large blue bins, make sure that when you do put your mail in, that there's no sticky substance there or tape or anything. Put your mail in, close the door, make sure it hits the bottom, and then check it again just before you leave, because they're hitting the post offices with the mail going out also.
That's helpful. Well, maybe I'll ask the city public safety commissioners on this one. When will the city offer the next phase of the Ring doorbell program, and how will that be communicated?
Right. We just, at our last commission meeting, we approved to send to City Council for their consideration funding that will equal both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of our Ring program. That's in the mid-year budget adjustments. It's going to be to City Council this month, and what we've heard, they're very, very supportive of the program. As you know, the first phase sold out in 1 day, second day sold out in 3 days. So the next program, we're going to target certain areas of our community, and we think the City Council, we know the City Council will support this very quickly, and I would assume within the next 60 days, it'll be announced, and we'll get the program out there again for Phase 3.
And I think the effectiveness of the program from the council standpoint has been well received and very positive. So I think the council will look favorably on that and working with the Public Safety Commission's recommendations. And we also have to obviously budget that and that process is coming up very soon. So I think the timing's about accurate on that. But we recognize that that's a popular program, and we're excited about that and want to offer that as much as we can as a tool to do that. Another question that came in, is there a plan for a long-term increase in the sheriff's presence or just a short-term response to the current situation or the immediate past situation, and then it'll die down and then it'll pick back up if the criminals return? I would say from a, and I'll let the sheriff comment on that as well, but I would say that from a council standpoint, I think the council stands united. The five of us that, public safety is probably our number one priority. And we've already allocated in the past few years additional resources for the additional patrols. Plus, I think it's important if the sheriff, you guys could comment a little bit about the extra resources that you guys bring to the table through the department. That's not just the regular patrol part, because I think that that's an important piece of this puzzle as we're responding and trying to curb crime moving forward.
I think I'll take this one on because we're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never stops. We have to be ready. The way I look at our deployment is, number one, I look at our customer satisfaction. Everybody in here is a customer. We have to do well by you, otherwise we won't be here. The other thing we have to do is we look at our response times. That's number one in me determining, is our deployment right? And it is. For the most part, it is. There will be times where some units may be stuck on a call, but deployment is huge. The city has been very generous in giving me whatever I need to combat any type of crime ticks that we notice, and that's where my crime analyst comes up. So the simple answer is we're not done. We'll always be there for you. We'll always increase whatever we have to do. The deputies really have stepped up recently. I couldn't be more pleased with all of them. Bottom line is the increases will continue, the motivation will continue, and when I'm not able to continue to motivate my people, then it's time for me to go. And right now, I'm nowhere near there. So guaranteed, the energy is in the station, the energy is here in the city, and these troops want to do right by you.
And thanks, Chris.
Just to extrapolate a little bit on that, so what then happens after Chris learns of some crimes that he'd like additional resources? He gets a hold of the commander or myself, and then I will allocate either resources from the Burglary Robbery Task Force, from our Criminal Intelligence Bureau, from one of our gang units, or our Reserve Task Force, which I just started up. I will allocate the resources necessary to get in here and to solve that problem. Now, will those resources be in here indefinitely? No, but they will be in here until we have the desired impact. And as soon as we get in here, and what happens is, because you're a freeway-friendly community, the people that are here to commit crimes that are relatively easy in terms of being freeway-friendly and being very accessible to the freeway, is they'll realize there's too many police officers here. We're going to go down the road. And what they do is they just keep moving down the road. Ultimately, then they circle back. But we will be able to push them out, and we will continue enforcement efforts, but we will need to partner with you in the end to get better eyes in the community and better reporting. And what the captain said about there's no crime too small, there's no incident too small to report it to us. And when the question earlier about can you come detain that person, if you give us enough information, we will certainly go out there and question that person. Whether that turns into a detention depends on what we find out there, but we will certainly come out.
And then, and we've gotten over the time, we're getting a lot of different cards here, but some of the questions that we've gotten in the past that have been posted online, I want to follow up because I kind of know the answer to this, is what does LA Sheriff and the Highway Patrol do about cars with no license plates, and why is this a problem?
That's a great question because I've been talking about that at every city council meeting for the last couple months. Altadena has a brand new captain. I've made friends out of him immediately when he got here because guess what? Who does the #1 amount of traffic stops? It's the CHP. They need to be on board with what's going on in our city and what's going on with our communities around us. One of the things that we've noticed is that a lot of the suspects are coming out in vehicles with their license plates covered with paper plates. Everybody has to have a license plate on their car. I have to have a license plate on my car. Guess what? That's a violation of the California Vehicle Code. You're going to get stopped. You're going to get cited. I've warned everybody. We're coming. We have a 0 tolerance in the city right now for people with no license plates. Obviously, there's a difference. If you just bought your car and came from the dealership, you have, you know, that month to get the plates on. I'm talking about cars, and we've all seen them with the metal license plates, the paper plates. You know, it's not new. The bottom line is that we're stopping them because we're going to get lucky on a traffic stop. That's how we catch these people. We catch them on traffic stops a lot of times. So we're partnering with CHP. The captain meets with me for lunch every now and then. We talk about what's going on in our communities and what's going on with them. We're going to use every resource we have around here. So that was a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Obviously, in light of events that have taken place over the last few weeks down in Florida, a question came in online, says, what is the city and the sheriff doing to help La Cañada Unified School District keep the schools safe? And I know we touched upon that, but maybe Eric wants to touch on that.
Yeah, I meet with all the principals at all the schools. We do drills together. We have a video that's on YouTube that our department put together. And we usually start the presentation with that, and we talk to the teachers so they know exactly what we do. I've had to respond to a shooting like that, so I have some firsthand knowledge. The teachers feel a little bit better about knowing what we're doing, and that's what we're doing with them. I know I work with the Joint Use Committee in the city, and we are planning to try and figure out how to incorporate the education for the kids also, and not just for the staff there.
Mike, if I could jump in. In California law, there's a couple loopholes. You can only buy one handgun a month, but you can buy as many shotguns and rifles a month as you want. And so we're going to change handgun to firearm. So you can only buy one firearm a month. So I'm carrying that bill. And then you have to be 21 to buy a handgun, but you can buy a shotgun and a rifle at 18. And so the same bill is we're going to raise the long guns to 21 to make it consistent with handguns. So I've put in both of those. It's SB 1100 is going to close both of those loopholes. Keep weapons away from the casual user. Hunters is a whole nother issue. They go through a 2-day course, background checks and other things. But it's something that we need to do.
Mike?
I'm sorry? It has not been heard yet in committee because the committees haven't started yet for this cycle. And it'll be in print on the 16th of March, SB 1100.
To add to that conversation, this past week at the board meeting, Supervisor Barger co-authored a motion to what I would call reinvigorate a program in collaboration with the Department of Mental Health and the Sheriff's Department, whereby they can proactively try to intercept typically what seems to be young men who might be angry or be vulnerable to some act of violence. That's a report back. The other thing that we want to add to that motion is what Columbine has done. I think they call it Safe to Call, if I remember it right. It's an anonymous hotline where a parent or a student or anyone could call and report maybe a friend, a teenage friend. You overheard them say, you know, they were angry and were going to go shoot up the school, or they were threatening suicide or something like that. That call can be made anonymously, and we want to add that to that motion as well. So a lot of collective efforts on that front.
All right.
And then one more from the Sheriff's Department. What we're doing is the sheriff has asked that all stations send there. The way the training works on the department is you have the training bureau, which is, they oversee all department training. Every station has its own training unit that conducts station-specific training. And then you have our Special Enforcement Bureau, which is our tactical training unit. So what the sheriff has directed is that all of our stations are going to go to a meeting, and they are going to go through training at Rio Hondo College. The station training representatives are going to attend. Our Special Enforcement Bureau is going to conduct the training along with our training bureau. It's going to be specifically geared towards active shooter scenarios at schools, and we're going to have all of our school resource officers there. Once that training occurs, then our station level personnel are going to go train their stations in the training. Every patrol person is going to go through the training, and we have a very short time deadline to complete that. So that is ongoing as we speak.
And Mike, I apologize, not to belabor the point, but I think this is really important. I can't remember the time frame now. Several months ago, Sheriff McDonald came before the board to renew a contract for SROs, the school resource officers. And some of the board members were not comfortable with that contract. Supervisor Barger fought very hard to keep that contract alive. That will be a report back as well with data that the board had asked. I'm trying to remember what the data was about how often school resource officers make an arrest on campus, what their involvement is with students. I imagine that most people in this room, if not all of us, know the kind of relationships that the school resource deputies have on our campuses. They're vital, they're very positive relationships. On one end of that argument, the extreme view says we don't want a heavy law enforcement presence, it's oppressive. Supervisor Barger believes that that uniform and that SRO in uniform should be trusted, should be respected, should feel like a safe place to go. And so that report back will be coming to the board. Please keep your eyes and ears open for it. We will need support for that ongoing program. It's a vital program, as we can see.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I did just want to mention that our Assembly member, Laura Friedman, made it from a delayed flight, so thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that. Oh, is that Laura next to you? Oh, Vickery.
That's
Wow.
my staffer.
Okay, forget that.
That's my staffer, Vickery.
Wow, Mike's really got to check the eyes. These glasses, these readers don't work. Oliver, this might be for you. You had mentioned the bills that were in 2015, 16, 17, and they died in committee. And the question that came in online is, why did they die?
I think there's a variety of reasons for that. I think, and Michelle actually can I know speak to this also. She and I have had a lot of discussions over what's happening in Sacramento, but really the bottom line is the governor currently believes passionately. I don't think it's a political issue for him. He just believes passionately that mass incarceration was the wrong thing to do, that we need to liberalize our criminal justice system. I think there's definitely a political money component to it too. The state had to reduce the prison population, and through 109, 47, 57, basically the state today has unfettered ability to release people from state prison, basically at the discretion of the parole board. I think all of those factors play into it, but the Public Safety Committee is pretty much stacked right now with folks that feel like we need to increase the liberalization of our criminal justice system. And I think Michelle and Anthony both can speak to that also.
I would defer to the senator. He knows best what happens in committees.
Yeah, I mean, I got taken off the committee because I was too reasonable. And, I'm a proud Democrat. And they kicked me off. So it is, that's why when I presented the bill is, we've been going around and around with the police chiefs for a month and a half of trying to find something that we think can get through. That's reasonable, because the governor truly does believe this. It's not politics, and he has a passion about prison reform, and it's one of his big agendas. And so, I give him credit for having a passion and a perspective and leadership. It just has puts a big cast over the whole system, and so it's difficult. We had one, 5 years ago, there was a chair of the Senate Public Safety Committee who just had there were no new crimes. She just said, we're not making any more new crimes. So any bill that had a new crime died. She just wouldn't, for like 5 years, no new crimes. That was her policy. So it's, unfortunately, it's a conversation that has been dominated by the extremes. And I think having all of you and having the coalition and having cities from across California come together helps build that bridge, because if we can't get it together, you'll help us do that. And nothing works better than the pressure of an initiative. That's the other reason why you're seeing more activity this year, is because the legislature doesn't want to let it happen outside of the Capitol. And so oftentimes you see a grassroots effort push the legislature into action, because sometimes the grassroots effort will be perceived as going too far, and so the legislature will come back to try to do something that's middle ground. So that's why it all works together. The direct democracy helps force the legislative democracy, and it all works. Before I end, I do want to introduce Yvette Kim from my office, who's here. So she handles La Cañada. She works out of the Glendale office, and that's Vickery Murphy, who also works for me. So thanks.
I think the only other thing I'd add to that, that Anthony described so eloquently, as a society, we only allow ourselves to be policed. We only allow law enforcement the amount of authority that we give them. And that's why it's so important that folks call when there are issues. That's why it's so important that folks get involved in this issue, because I think, I believe passionately that California is a reasonable place, despite what people think about us, that we come up with good ideas and good solutions. But like Anthony mentioned, when the extremes dominate, it drowns out the consensus opinion. And I think the consensus opinion now is we need to have some more common sense. And the more that we speak up, the more that folks get engaged, the more folks call, the more folks talk to folks that can do something like Anthony. That's how we get things changed. And I think, unfortunately, it takes things like increased crime. It takes enough victims being created in order to spur action. Before we get to that point, let's get involved and let's get active now.
Thank you. Okay, a local question. Who patrols and is responsible for Hahamunga Park, LA County Sheriff or the Pasadena Police?
The answer to the question is Hahamunga Park is patrolled by Pasadena. We do crossover patrol with being the school resource officer. If we have issues over there, we do a little bit of crossover patrol over there.
Okay, thank you. Another question that came up before, and obviously this was a focus in our community, one of the reasons why we're here today, and the question was, were the 2 home invasion robberies in December truly random? So I don't know if they're active investigations, but I think that there's been some questions about if the people, maybe the suspects were, known to the residents or knew of a current situation. I don't know what you can comment on, but I think it would be helpful if you could.
They are still active investigations, and we treat them just like we treat anybody's. Treat them as real, investigate them as far as we can, and when we arrest these rings that we even catch in other cities, we go back and we see where else they've been, okay? So I can't answer that question yet. They are both unsolved right now. I'm not sure. But for right now, we're doing everything we can to, the Robbery Burglary Task Force has taken over that investigation. And as you know, they are everywhere. But one thing is for sure, it's usually the same people committing the crimes. So once they get a good lead, they'll keep following up and finding out where they've been. So as soon as I know something, you will know something, because I will feel a lot better. Bottom line is those guys crossed the line, and that we will not tolerate that. We will do everything we can, and we will not just let it go. So it is still an active investigation.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Another question that came in online says, do city ordinances allow for gates or walls higher than 6 feet high? Because for safety reasons. So I don't have the specific answer to that question, but we will post that online, the answer to that as well. So, and there's, just so everybody knows, I'm just trying to go through and get a flavor for some of these questions. There's some comments or cards that came in that aren't really questions, they're more comments. So I'm kind of holding off on those. There's also some other questions that are tagged on, connected to other cards that have come in. So I'm trying to get a flavor for that. But I know we are running over on time. So I think we can just take a couple more questions, and then what we'll do is I think from the council and the Public Safety Commission and the staff, we'll make a commitment that every question that we can answer, we will post that online, and we will answer all those questions that came in, so that we don't want, of course, anyone to feel short-sighted. One of the questions that came in, it says, did the city pay for this program? Which is this today. So yes, we did pay for the program, and somebody asked how much we paid for the program, and I don't know the answer to that, but we will tell you how much.
I was free.
Huh? Anthony, you don't seem to ever be free. But as we're wrapping up, does Terry or Maureen, from the Public Safety Commission standpoint, do you want to make a closing comment or?
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for spending your Monday night here with us to get information, valuable information on how we got to this place, and hopefully how you can help to get out of this place. I think it is especially important to focus on the Taking Back Our City coalition, because the reality is here in La Cañada, we are very fortunate to have an amazing, involved, active, talented sheriff's department. When I first heard that their response time was like 3 to 4 minutes on essentially your residential burglaries, I work in LA. That is unheard of. We are so fortunate to have that kind of response. But it's really important to acknowledge that our sheriffs can do everything right. They can investigate, they can arrest, and our prosecutors can do everything right, get every conviction. But unless or until we can fix our jail situation and our prison situation, when individuals are sentenced to a year in the county jail and only actually serve 18 days, when individuals, as Michelle said, and I'm afraid this impacts the senator's bill, are sentenced to 180 days in the county jail and they are automatically released due to jail overcrowding, we are living in a time when there are no consequences for the kinds of offenses that are impacting our community. And the only way that that can change is at the state level. So I hope you take the information that you have learned here, you share it with your friends and neighbors, and we stand up and we do something to make a difference. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone. And there was just a real practical question that I wanted to have the sheriff comment on. And it was about car break-ins, because that's obviously a thing. And we talk about, don't leave your valuables in the car, et cetera, et cetera. One of the questions that came in, which I've heard actually about, is somebody said, if I remove all my valuables from visible side of the car, should I leave my car open so that the criminal won't smash the window and will just open the door? So I'll leave that to...
So there's no such thing as a bad question. Every question's a good question. But so the answer is lock everything, remove everything from your cars. Don't have anything visible. And it was unfortunate for me that I was here just down the street in the Flint Ridge area, what was it, 2 weeks ago? I drove around just because I wanted to get a sense for the area here. I wanted to get a sense for how the burglaries are committed and where they're committed. And on some of the streets in a very nice neighborhood right here that's close to us, I just started checking some cars, and I saw laptops, I saw iPads, I saw iPhones, Samsungs, sitting on seats, no cover, no anything, and that's just a crime of opportunity. So we've got to do some better messaging, and we've got to get people to listen more, because if we can't get over that, then we're never going to solve the crime problem, and that's pretty simple. But the answer to the question is, just take everything out of the car, put it in the trunk, make it so it's not visible, and then certainly lock your doors.
All right, thank you. And I did just want to clarify the question that came in, did the city pay for this program? We did pay for the program, but I think the intent of the question was, did we pay for any of the speakers? And the answer to that is no. We did not pay for any of the speakers to be here. We obviously paid for the food and the refreshments, and we'll pay for the lights. But that's about the extent of the dollar cent. So it's like I said, we will make a commitment that all the questions that we can answer that are not talked about, that we didn't talk about tonight, we'll post those online, also on our Facebook page, so everybody has answers to those. And I really want to thank everyone. I want to thank the Public Safety Commission, thank all our speakers, all our guests for coming, and really thank you folks for being here and sitting through this. And at 8:33, I'm going to close this and say thank you all and have a nice evening.